Hey guys, welcome back. Thanks for joining me for another video. This week we're going to talk about temper tantrums. So when we hear this phrase, we tend to think of a toddler. We tend to think of someone who's just not getting their way, this little kid. They don't know how to manage their thoughts and feelings and really how to deal with maybe hearing the word no or not getting what they desire. And so they kick and scream and lash out. And the truth of the matter is that adults can also have temper tantrums. So let's talk about a narcissist temper tantrum and how you can best react or respond to it. When a child wants something, it is very normal for the child to lash out. Now, depending on the age of the child, they're going to learn certain things in order to be able to soothe themselves. And so this ability, or they're going to be able to start to learn boundaries or learn how to soothe themselves, of course, but they're going to learn how to manage their own feelings when they feel something uncomfortable, whether it is anger, frustration, them not getting their way, whatever. So it is common, it is normal for a young child who doesn't know any of these skills to react in a very emotional way by kicking, screaming, saying something maybe that isn't nice, and just lashing out because they're being very reactive because they have a feeling inside of themselves that they don't know how to manage and deal with, and they're kind of just like pushing it out of themselves and pushing it onto the parent or the adult that they're with. Now, oftentimes this reaction is not fun to have to deal with or even witness if you are the adult, but it is appropriate based on what the child knows and how the child is taking care of him or herself, which they can't really do because they're still a child and they haven't learned these skills yet. Since they don't know how to regulate their emotions, a child, you'll see very similarities between not just someone who's narcissistic, but just an adult in general. There are a lot of adults that you will see as being a physical adult, but they're still a child inside. They're emotionally 8 years old. They're mentally 15 years old. And so when we understand this, then kind of like, once again, it is appropriate. I don't want to say appropriate like we need to accept this, but it makes sense why someone who's a grown adult, physical adult, is reacting the way they are to not getting what they want. When you learn about narcissistic personality disorder, you learn about how this person is very much disconnected from themselves. And when they're disconnected from themselves in this really significant way, they're not going to take responsibility for how they feel. They're not going to sometimes even really know what really they think and feel. They're going to just create stories that alleviate any of the pain that they might be feeling and kind of put that uncomfortableness on someone else, make it your responsibility why I feel the way I do. And so when this tends to happen, when this disconnect happens between a narcissist and themselves, or even a toxic person or an unhealthy person, any person who has that disconnect with themselves, that doesn't know what they think and how they feel, or isn't fully ready to take responsibility for it, this is naturally just going to happen. And the sun just came through, but we are in the dead of winter right now in New England, and so I am not mad at that right now. And actually, I might just take a minute to just do one of these and to like fully absorb the vitamin D. But so I hope it's not distracting too much, but I ain't doing anything about it because I welcome it. But anyways, so a temper tantrum or an outburst is really a normal response to someone who doesn't know how to manage their own feelings. I think what ends up happening is we as adults are interacting with another adult and we assume or we think or we project that they should be able to manage this. They should be able to own their stuff, apologize for it, soothe themselves, and they just don't know how to do those things. What pains me sometimes is really when I see a child, no matter really the age, I think the limit for me is probably around those teen years, but even then, we can't really blame the teenager for having an outburst because now they're dealing with things like hormones and they're dealing with other things that are going on inside of themselves where they're trying to learn how to manage their own feelings. And if you never really received the skills and the knowledge to be able to do this, you're going to grow up to be a grown adult and not be able to do it as well, which is going to cause a lot of problems in your life. But what pains me is when I see a child having an outburst and the parent completely losing it or not being empathetic to that child. And now I am a mom and I have a 9-year-old, and so I fully understand the frustration or the exhaustion that it means to be a parent. So by no means is that a judgment. It's just about having to manage ourselves as parents in order to be able to parent the best. And we don't always do it right, and that's okay. But for the most part, if the consistent behavior to the child is a negative experience and not one that's coming from understanding these concepts, then you're just going to end up doing more damage than you're going to do good. But anyways, I digress. When we talk about temper tantrums and these outbursts that someone who's narcissistic will have, whether we're talking about narcissistic rage, whether we're talking about this person not getting their way and now they're becoming very manipulative, or they're using guilt, or whatever it is that this person does. Every person is different. Every person has a different, I like to call it a drink of choice, which is the approach that they, or the tactic that they kind of lean towards when they're feeling something uncomfortable. And you have it as well. I have it as well. It's kind of like that default. And unless you have the self-awareness to know what the default is and take full responsibility for it, then nothing really ever changes. So the outside world might be able to see what's going on, but if you can't see it, then nothing's going to change. And so someone who's narcissistic, or a lot of people who are just unhealthy or toxic, or just majority of the human race, quite frankly, are just very unaware of their own self and owning everything. So for me, I would say 90% of the time, no matter what's going on or who does what or says what, I'm going to own how I feel about that. Even though someone did something that upset me or hurt me or whatever, those feelings are mine. And so I have to be able to kind of like embrace them and take them and learn how to do things like soothe myself or validate my feelings. And this is what we talk about in self-parenting. So if you have been watching me for a while, you know I always talk about self-parenting. I'll link the course down below if you guys are interested, but it's essentially mental health wrapped up in this, 4-week program. I think maybe it's 5 weeks, where we kind of get into what does it mean on a daily basis to take care of myself. And we hear these phrases often, like be the parent to yourself, learn how to love yourself, like all of those things. But understanding what does that actually mean and breaking it down, for me, that's something I've always tried to do with this channel, with my coaching, with my courses, is breaking things down where they're understandable and they're simple, and it's not anything that we're getting too complicated in. So again, if you're interested, I'll link that down below. But now let's talk about like, how do we respond to these types of tantrums or these outbursts or these rages? I think one of the first things that you have to do is you really, really have to understand what's going on. So it's your default right now is going to just be reactive. Your default is going to be annoyed, upset by what's happening, and you're not going to always be able to like see the bigger picture. So remember, you're trying to change something about yourself. You're trying to change how you approach this person. You're not trying to change this person. So if I'm trying to change something within myself and the way I approach this, then I have to be aware as when the default shows up and it wants me to just do what I've always done, which is be reactive. So understanding what's really going on here, and that what you're witnessing is a tantrum, and that what you're witnessing is someone who has an inability to soothe themselves and doesn't understand boundaries and all those things, that's really, really essential, because if you don't really grasp that, you're going to take what someone is doing personally. That's just going to happen. So the first step is about not doing anything, really. It's just about understanding what's going on and being aware of what's going on. When you start to slow down, when you bring self-awareness to anything, you immediately start to slow down what you were just naturally going to be doing, right? What you were programmed to do. And that's really what we're trying to do now, is just start to slow down our interactions, slow down our minds, slow down ourselves, so we can operate in a different way. A great question that you might want to ask yourself too, in this kind of like step one, is why is this person doing this? I say this to people all the time on the phone when I'm talking to a client, why do you think this person is doing this? They know the answer. They know exactly why this person is behaving the way that they are. They're just taking it personally, which is causing a lot of the hurt and the pain and the reactivity to happen. Now remember, everything that we're talking about is about you. It's not about this person. So the work is going to be coming from you and not coming from them. So step two is going to be staying calm. You have to learn how to stay calm. You have to learn how to not react. You have to learn how to be able to just zip it and not let the ego get involved that wants to keep chiming and chirping at the situation and I'm going to beat this person and I'm going to show them and I'm going to do this. You have to learn how to really like relinquish the ego so you can find more peace rather than getting tied up in the drama, which is what you're trying to not do. The next thing is giving them validation. Here's the thing. Giving someone validation doesn't mean that you agree with them. It just means that you understand why they're behaving the way that they do. Now, you don't have to like fully verbalize that, but understanding why they're doing what they're doing is validation, really. Now, I know most people don't really want to validate a grown adult who's throwing a temper tantrum. And again, it's not saying that the behavior is okay, but it is acknowledging that the behavior is happening because of this. They're doing what they're doing because of how they feel energetically, how they feel emotionally, how they feel mentally. They're doing what they're doing because they don't really have the skills to be able to manage those feelings on their own. But you can also, in that kind of like validation piece, you can also learn how to create that line that says, but I'm going to also detach from you in this way. And I'm not going to make your stuff a part of my kind of like energetic space. The last thing is boundaries. I literally did a whole course on boundaries because they are something in of themselves, but boundaries are fundamental towards you protecting your energy and you having the best possible relationship with someone who is unhealthy that you have to have some kind of a relationship with. So if this is a person that you don't have to have a relationship with, great, then the boundary is goodbye, I never want to see you again. But if you have to engage with this person in some way, shape, or form, boundaries are going to be essential. And boundaries aren't always about letting people out of your life and leaving relationships. They're just about where do you draw the line. Boundaries also doesn't mean that I'm going to verbally tell you what I need and that you're going to give it to me, but it does mean that I'm going to learn how to energetically detach from you and just protect my own energy. That's really what boundaries are about. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Share this with anyone who you think might benefit from this information. I think that you definitely know a person out there that's struggling with something like this for sure, because it doesn't have to be someone who is just narcissistic. It can just be someone who doesn't ever like to own their stuff. And P.S., most people don't. So you're going to get temper tantrums and you're going to get people who are very reactive and people that don't know how to soothe themselves. So learning how to manage your own self in those situations is key. Again, I hope you've enjoyed this and I'll see you guys next week.